Hello everyone, here we are, it's Friday, and I love it that we are making a new flower. Well, it's an old flower, we've made it before, but this is a different version. So we have Anna over here who is taking all your comments and all your questions. Make sure that you follow, if you're on YouTube, follow the link that will take you over to our website, and on the website you can go ahead and make your questions and comments in the specific boxes. I do believe we have one that's specific for questions so that Anna can easily grab those and read those out. So say hello to Anna. Anna?
Hello everyone. Yes, if you have a question, there's a little button that says ask. Press that and make sure to ask Liam.
Yes. All right. So here we are. We are going to make our wild poppy today. And one of the things that I love about this poppy, these are arranged in this gorgeous arrangement. This arrangement is actually part of our new masterclass that's launching in August 2. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, be sure and go over to the Craft Academy and sign up for the masterclass. You're going to want to do this class. Also, next Friday, we're going to be making this gorgeous eucalyptus. I think this is probably, I'm looking forward to this more than almost any other member make workshop. Megan's going to show us how to make these. I love how they are so flowing. They're different than a lot of greenery that we've made with crepe paper. And then we've mixed this arrangement with a frosted paper. This is a lucedendron. And then we have our I keep wanting to call them straw flowers, but that's not quite it. It's, anyway, it's something flower. And this is made out of cardstock. So this is like a mixed bouquet and all of its goodness. So today we're gonna learn how to make this adorable little poppy. All right, any questions yet?
Are the stems wrapped in heavy crepe paper?
They are, and we'll get to all of that here in 1 second. So let's go over our materials and tools unless there's any urgent questions. Other than that one, that's a good question. All right, so we have here our template, and I've printed it out, and you can also use the SVG style if you're using a rotary blade. So I had a lot of questions on this template because I think everyone was confused that it's so small, but these flowers are quite tiny, as you can see here. They're really, really tiny, and I love them because they're more of a filler flower. So they're a great thing when you're making a bouquet and arrangement. You want to have different size flowers, and filler flowers are very, very important to the success of your arrangement. So the actual template is quite small, and here on the template I say cut one of each. And this particular section right here, the petals, the inside pieces, and the leaves, what I did before I cut them was stretch the crepe paper at least 200%. So I stretched it quite a bit. And then here's a little piece here that I did not stretch, and I haven't even cut it out yet. So let's talk about colors. For the poppy itself, I made mine in a chiffon or a vanilla. Okay, chiffon and a nectarine. You can also make them in vanilla. I wanted to point out that the great thing about this poppy flower, you can choose almost any of these orange colors. You could even do a coral poppy if you wanted to, but you could do a nectarine, mango, tangerine, the poppy itself. You could go with the chiffon or even a vanilla for a whiter version. So, you know, really add some variety. I chose these two colors because I knew I wanted to put it in this arrangement, and I felt like this was the color palette that I wanted to support the main flowers. So just know that. And the beautiful thing about this poppy too, and I grabbed these just in case, if you guys have any of these 10-pack bundles that you've bought off of our site, these little beautiful 10 packs, there are so many poppy colors in this 10-pack that you can use. So this is a great flower to make. Simple, it has enough detail. Okay. So we have the nectarine and chiffon is what I made my petals from. Then this is where it got a little confusing for some people because you can't really see it when you look at the flower itself. I'm using a raspberry for this piece here, and this piece is actually kind of hidden. You'll see. You can also use, if you don't have the raspberry, you can also use the azalea or the fuchsia. So any of these colors. You could also use the hibiscus. So any of these kind of brighter pink colors will work for this piece. Then I have this honeysuckle piece right up here. This is the little teeny tiny bit that's behind the flower itself. And you can use honeysuckle, you could use hibiscus, you could use coral. So any of these lighter pinks. If you're using hibiscus on the center, I would use a lighter one for the back. I like having that variety. So just to be super clear with the colors, use, you know, a variety. I would say some sort of orange, yellow, and then some sort of pinks on these. Then for the leaves and the stems, I am using the heavy juniper, which is this crepe paper. If you don't have heavy juniper, you can go ahead and use a double-sided or even an extra fine for this. It will work. For some reason on this flower, I wanted to go full heavy just to, you know, show you all that you can make some gorgeous flowers with the heavy crepe paper, but there's so much variety that you can do. All right, any other questions at this point, Anna, on the crepe paper?
We'll have some questions that are coming in, but I think I'll ask them a little later when you're in the moment.
Sounds good. All right, so then for my tools and materials, I am using the wire cutters. I always keep my scissors on hand. You can, yeah, of course, well, no, never mind. We have to use our scissors because we're doing a lot of fringing. I forgot my fringe clip. Shoot, okay, I'm gonna have somebody run out and get it. I have my art glitter glue. My needle nose tweezers, I just kind of keep those on hand as well. We may not use them, but I think we do. My curling tool, and then for materials, I'm using an 18 gauge wire and a 24 gauge wire in green. So that's that. And then of course Anna's going to grab me my fringe clip. Okay. So here I have everything cut out. And one thing I wanted to point out to you guys, again, I'm gonna just show you, just to kind of give you an example. So this is what it would look like to pre-stretch your crepe paper. And if you want to get really technical about it, thank you, Anna. All right, I will be using the fringe clip. If you want to get really technical about, your mat is 10 inches or 12 inches wide. So if you are using a cutting machine, go ahead and cut a 6-inch piece. You can cut a smaller one too. This will cut a lot of crepe paper petals. So I'm just thinking if you want to fill up your mat. And then I'm just giving it a nice stretch. It's kind of fun, really. It's very satisfying. So here I'm almost 12 inches. You can do a little more. It's not quite as easy to stretch on the edge, and don't worry about that. I mean, you're getting a lot of use out of a small piece of material, so once you stretch it, you could actually just cut off the edges if you felt like it, or just cut inside. So that's really about the kind of stretch that I'm looking for. And the reason why I wanted to do this, these petals, they're so tiny. You could make these out of extra fine, and I know we do have a version of them made from extra fine. I wanted to use the heavy crepe paper for this version just as a variety, and I like the weight and the way that these really deep grain lines hold the petal really nicely. However, thinning them out makes it a bit more papery like a petal. Does that make sense? All right, so I've cut all my pieces out, and I did cut everything out except for this piece on the Cricut cutting machine, and I wanted to tell you guys settings for that. So for our heavy crepe paper, we generally do a cotton setting with more pressure, and since I did stretch it, I went ahead and did a cotton setting with just the default pressure. You don't need it quite as thick when you stretch it, or you don't need quite as much pressure when you stretch it. So does that sound good? Any questions on cutting your crepe paper? We'll just keep going. All right, so then the next step is to take our 2 strips of yellow, and this is for the center, and then our 2 strips of our fuchsia. So I have the nectarine and the fuchsia, or I'm sorry, the raspberry. We have a lot of different colors here that are very similar. Okay, I knew that I should have checked this ahead of time, but guess what? I have another one on hand. It's really important to keep your tips of your glue clean. Since this art glitter glue dries so hard, it does clog up pretty easily. You can wash it and to clean it out, but when you're on video, it's nice to have it ready to go. So I'm putting on my metal tip because I do want a finer point for this. And I'm just going to run a strip of glue on one side of my yellow piece, whatever yellow or orange color that you're using. And note that I'm using the same color for my petals as I'm using for my center stamen. And as you're putting this on, it might stretch a bit. It looks like my raspberry is a bit longer, and that's okay. Just kind of line it up. Set that aside and let that dry. We'll do the same for this other piece. And place that on there. I'm going to add a little bit more glue because my piece is a bit wider. I think my head is a little bit ahead of what I'm doing because I actually made this flower quite a while ago. So I'm trying to remember as I go. All right. Let's go ahead and press that together, make a nice seal, and you can let that dry for a minute. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and clip my ends. And here is something that is a personal preference. You can stack these two and cut them at the same time for fringing, or you can do them one at a time. It depends on how comfortable you feel with your fringe. So I'm going to stack mine. And I'm going to place the raspberry side under the fringe clip. And it should fit. I'm going to do one at a time, changing my mind here. No pressure. I don't want to pressurize myself. All right, so I'm going to place it so that just a little bit of raspberry is peeking out. And you can see how it really does fit the fringe clip. Now, I'm going to cut my fringe, but rather than going straight down, I'm going to give it a bit of a point and an arch. So I'm cutting out little tiny bits of this crepe paper. And this takes a minute, but it's really worth it. It's worth getting that extra shape on these, which is not something that we always do. Oftentimes we'll just fringe straight rather than on a curve. But it adds that really nice little detail. You can see I'm cutting the fringe all the way down to my pink crepe paper. And I will tell you right now is a great time for questions because I'll be doing this for a minute.
So Janie is wondering where she can find the Cricut cutting guide that you just showed.
Yes. Okay. So if you go into our Craft Academy, we have a full course in there. We'll call it a skill course, and it's called the Crafter's Guide to the Cricut Maker, or something like that. And there's also one for silhouette. And in that course, which I think is totally worth everybody watching, if you have a Cricut machine and you use our files, I highly, highly, highly recommend you go and watch that course because it will give you, everything you need to download our files, upload our files, work with the settings on our files. We actually have quite a bit of fun in that class. So go see it. So you can download it right there. Even if you don't take the class, you can also download it, but I do recommend you do it. It's really handy. I keep this right beside my cutting machine all the time because I have all the different settings for the different materials for both my rotary blade and for the fine point blade. All right. So I'm kind of taking my time on this. I'm not rushing. I want it to be fairly nice. And I love, love, love this French clip. It makes it so much easier. You can kind of go in here and pull out those little bits. This is where your tweezers might be helpful. You can grab any sort of little pieces that are stuck in there. It looks like mine are good. Okay, set that aside and do the second one. This one wasn't glued in there quite as straight, but that's okay. All right. This is really good practice on, you know, learning how to fringe precisely. Whoops, one got a little bent. And I would say try to make your little fringes no bigger than, I would say, 1/16 of an inch wide. So you want them fairly thin.
We do have a question from Mona. Are you cutting a little V? So
Yes,
that part is cut
I'm
out?
cutting a V, but I'm also cutting, do we have a pen that you could, someone throw me a pen? I can draw it, I know. I'm cutting a V. I'll give you a close-up here in just a second. All right, I'll draw it here for you. So I'm cutting, this is jumbo size. So if this is the strip, remember this is jumbo, I'm cutting at a curve at the top and kind of down, and then a curve back. So a curve and then a curve. So it looks kind of like that. So we're getting little curved points at the top. And you know, do the best you can. Don't worry about it if it's not exactly like that. If it's more of a V, that's okay too. But that's my intention. My intention is to give it a curve at the top. Thanks for the pen, whoever had it on hand. And then let me give you a close-up too. Mine aren't perfect, you know, this is real here. Oh, there we go. But you can see, and I might even go in if I feel like some of my ends are a bit chunky, you can just go in and kind of tip those off if I if I miss the point and I have a little bit of a flat top. And if it's helpful, well, I wouldn't say that. I would not use your pinking shears for this. I just think they're too wide, even the small ones. All right. And I would say, you know, even if you are making this flower with the extra fine crepe paper, I still would make the centers from the heavy. I don't know. I just think this works really, really well. And also, we don't use heavy crepe paper as much as we do use the extra fine and the double-sided. So I think it's so much fun to have the variety and have, you know, in this arrangement that I did that's sitting on the table, having the variety of different textures of crepe paper is so pretty. I just love the look of that. Something that you guys will learn in the next masterclass. I hope everybody is signed up to go take that. It took a lot of energy and love to make that master class, but I think it's going to be really good. Okay, so that one's done. Now, crazy, but I'm going to cut half of this pink off. So I'll go ahead and take my scissors and cut down the middle. We just want a very, very thin part of that raspberry crepe. Okay, now I'm going to take my 18 gauge wire, and before I do this though, take the curling tool and you'll place the hot pink crepe upwards and then just give this a nice little roll across your finger so that it curls down. And I'm just double checking here. Yep.
Okay, so April is wondering, this is her first time, so welcome April.
Welcome April.
Is it better to buy extra fine or heavy crepe paper for most projects?
That is a trick question because there is, well, I would say we use extra fine more. However, I think the best way, if you're beginning with crepe paper, I would go and buy some of these gorgeous 10 packs that we do, because then you get a sampling of a bunch of different colors. So this is a heavy pack. We also have an extra fine pack, and then we also have some double-sided. And if you're going to get double-sided, get the whites and the greens. But that's a great way to start out. I would say we use double-sided and extra fine more. However, there are times when the heavy crepe paper is really important. So having a sampling of each is a really good idea. All right, so I've given all of these just a little bit of a curl. Then I'm going to turn it over so that the raspberry is facing the table and start wrapping this around my wire. I feel like this is a good flower to start, even if you're just buying a couple colors of crepe paper. You can, if you wanted to, since we're using very little, get one color of the pink, get a lighter color, and then use a marker to darken the pink for this little tiny spine. That's an option, just to get that variety. So here's the thinking on this little teeny tiny strip of raspberry. It's really hidden, but what happens when you look at the flower here, let's bring the camera over to the flower. When you look at the flower, there's definitely a change of color. There's like a hint of darkness inside of this, which adds dimension that you can't get if it were just one color. So that's the reason for this raspberry. And it does peek through just a little tiny bit, and it adds that detail. I think when I was writing the post for this particular flower, I said, you know, this is a simple beginner basic flower, but it has a lot of detail, and this is where we're finding the detail. All right, I've wrapped the first one, and now I'll go ahead and do the same with the second.
So Shirley is wondering which size wire are you using?
So this is the 18 gauge.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'll just keep, and you know, as you're adding this onto the wire, it's probably good to move the wire down. You don't want the wire to peek out, but you want it to, you don't want it to fall off the tip. So I've slid it down just a bit, and I'm stacking it right on top of the other. The one layer is stacked. I'm not moving down the wire. I'm not moving it anywhere. I'm just putting it one row right on top of the other.
All right, then Emily is wondering, the bouquet that you showed us next to you, are you going to show how to arrange that in the masterclass?
Yes, this is one of the 12 arrangement classes, is this particular arrangement, and I love it. We don't do this as often. This is a very free, open, airy style arrangement that needed to be done because it's so on trend. It's what's, you know, you're seeing a lot of that right now, so we're going to teach you how to do it. All right, I'm just kind of pinching and making sure this is all in place. Then I'm going to set it aside and let that dry before I do anything else. Now the petals are really quite simple. They're already cut, and the only thing that I want to do is take my curling tool and just add just a bit of shape. And the thing about poppies is the petals go every which direction, so give it some variety, just a little shape, not too much. You can see that I cut with my cutting machine because I have this little tiny hair hanging off. I'm going to cut that off. Yeah, so I feel like this little flower, it's small and mighty. It has a big punch when you're using it in your arrangements. I used this flower in 2 arrangements actually. There's also a wreath that I did with some sunflowers and big, very, very sunny, happy wreath. And I also used it for that. All right, I want this to dry a bit more, so I'm going to keep it. We're going to do our leaves next.
Okay, while you do that, we do have a question from Anna. She's saying you used to bend the wires in other flowers to help the middle stay on. What's the reason that recent flowers, the wire is not bent?
Yes. Okay. So we, just like you guys, as we make more and more flowers, we learn. And what we have found is this glue. This is the art glitter glue, is so strong that we don't need to. So I had trouble in the past with the heads popping off, but I'm telling you, if you use art glitter glue, You don't need to. And the thing that I like about not having to bend it is now I don't need to deal with having that bulky wire inside, and I can keep the focus really on the actual crepe paper. I love that question.
Yeah, and we should also point out that now is a great time to get the glue because it's a water-based glue. It does not ship in the colder months.
Thank you, Anna.
So we will stop shipping this probably around mid-October, depending on what the weather will look like.
Yeah, so stock up because this is by far the best glue. I just did a project using some leather, and I used this glue for the leather, and I tried to pull it apart and I could not. So it's amazing. Okay, I'm going to make the leaves, and these are really quite simple. I'm gonna see if I can pull one out for you guys here. Poppy leaves are very wild and kind of, I don't know, they don't have any sort of structure. They're just sort of splaying all over the place. So I went ahead and cut this leaf along the grain line, and there's not two sides. I'm going to add a line of glue, and I'm starting right underneath the first set of leaves, placing my wire right on top of that, and then I'm pinching my wire closed. Just go ahead and pinch it closed. I'm taking the base and just kind of twirling it between my fingers to get a nice fine wrap. You can see that. And then once it's pretty much dry, go ahead and open up those little leaf flaps. And so it looks like that. Should I bring it up higher? Whoop, can we get focused there? Whoop, whoop. There we go. So it's a very, very simple leaf to make. And you know, I'm putting 2 leaves on each flower. You can do as many as you like. All right. Making sure that the wire is hidden between the crepe paper layers. That's important. And then just opening that up.
We did have a question from Ingrid earlier who was wondering if you could demonstrate how to wrap the crepe paper around the stem after the leaves are already attached with floral tape.
Sure, except I won't use floral tape because I'm going to use the crepe paper, but yes, I will do that. Alrighty, we have here this is pretty much dry. I would probably leave it a little bit longer, but we need to get going. So I'm just going to hold it and give it a nice little fluff with my fingers. And you can see how beautiful that looks. And look how worth it, in my opinion, it was to cut those into that kind of arched point, to the curved point. I think it was worth it. Okay, and then I'm going to take my points of my petals, put some glue just at the base there. I'll turn my wire over, it makes it easier. I'll put the point right onto my wire, and then I'll place the petal around the raspberry crepe paper. So I'm kind of hiding the raspberry crepe paper. If it peeks through a bit, that's awesome. But for the most part, I'm covering it up.
Kathy is wondering what gauge did you use for the leaves?
Oh, thank you. Yes, the leaves are 24 gauge. So I used the lighter wire for the leaves. If you only have 14 gauge on hand, that's fine. You can use that as well. So these are poppies that only have 4 petals, which makes it really easy to place. You can place them right across from each other like this, and then do the X shape with the other 2. And notice how I'm letting my petals, the curl of my petals, go in different directions. And you can play with that a bit more once you have it done and once it's dry. So see, I'm pressing it kind of into the center, and then I'm pressing it along the side just to kind of cover up that raspberry. There we go. To cover up the raspberry, or whichever color you choose to use. Okay. So there's my poppy. And you can pull the petals, actually let it dry just a little bit, but you can pull the petals out once it's dry. Now I'm going to add this little fuchsia piece. And I just called it fuchsia, but what I really meant was honeysuckle. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. Most of the time I might eyeball it, but for today, let's just go ahead and cut it out. And I'll place that along my grain, using those lines to match. You can cut more than one at a time if you'd like to. I'm just making one flower right now, so go ahead and do that. Take a line of glue right along the edge. This is where the tweezers really come in handy. And then I'll fold that over and make myself a nice little tube. Once I have it folded over, I do like to slide my tweezers between to make sure I'm not gluing them, the layers together. Kind of press it down. Okay. Now I'm going to slide that onto the wire and pull it up to the top as far as you can. I'm going to take my tweezers and go in. You can see, can you see this? Yeah, there we go. All right, so I'm holding it at an angle and I'm now twisting it out and stretching. So I'm stretching the crepe paper. You could also stretch the crepe paper. Let me do that to show you. You could stretch the edge of it ahead of time before you bring it up to the top. So you just want the very, very edge stretched, not the base. That actually worked a bit better. So I'm pressing it up towards the top. Get those tweezers in there. And I'm actually wanting to kind of roll that edge around to make a really kind of interesting finish. If you haven't seen this type of poppy in the wild, or even in your garden, because you can obviously get these as flowers for your garden, go take a look, go Google them and take a look. They're really, really interesting how they have this cute little detail. And of course, there are so many varieties of poppies out there. And I'm stretching it a bit to bring it up over the end of my poppy as best that I can, and then giving it a bit of a twist. All right, and I'll place some glue at my base, which I probably could have done before, and just kind of pressing that together to keep it in place. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to wrap the stems. All right, we have some green crepe paper here, and I like to use crepe paper on my stems rather than floral wire most of the time. There are times, floral wire, rather than floral tape most of the time. There are times that floral tape is very important. When I'm finishing a flower like this that's very delicate and there's not really any need to have that strength of the floral tape, I will use my crepe paper instead because it matches much better. I don't really need this whole strip, so let me kind of just get a piece of it. So I'll show you guys how much I cut here. I'm cutting, I would say about 1/4 inch. And the edge doesn't have to be perfect, but I probably could use a little bit better than that. All right, so we're about 10 inches. I'm gonna cut it one more time. That edge was a bit ragged. So I think about 10 inches will do. We'll find out here in a second. So about 1/4 inch wide. And something that I like to do when I cut my strips like this and I don't use them all, I like to keep a container with all of my extras because I'll use them at some point. You can go ahead and stretch your piece ahead of time. That might make it easier. Add some glue to start. And I'm going to overlap quite a bit of that pink honeysuckle so that just the top is showing. And then I'm going to move my crepe down the wire. And if you haven't pre-stretched it, make sure you stretch it along the way. I'm adding glue to my wire. I find this works really well to start it at the beginning with the glue on the crepe and then just add the glue down the wire. And as I'm rolling it, I'm stretching it and twisting all in one. And I'm making it as flat as possible. So you can move down the wire, say an inch or two. I have to go over and look and see what I did over here. And then add in your leaf. Go ahead and twist that crepe paper around both wires. I'll add some more glue. And I want my second leaf to be fairly close to my first leaf, so I'll go ahead and add the second one in. And then just move down. I don't think I need my stem quite this long, so I'm going to go ahead and trim it. And I think it takes a little practice. The more that you do this, the better you get at making it as smooth as possible. And I will tell you guys, if I look back at some of my first flowers, they didn't look so good. So, you know, be really gentle with yourself when you're doing this. I ran out of crepe paper on the end, but I will tell you, I only used about 6 inches for my main stem. So I just need a little bit more. And again, some of you might find it's easier to pre-stretch your crepe before you wrap. I find it's just as easy to stretch as I wrap, so do whatever works best for you. Okay, just tearing that off, rolling it between my fingers to seal. And then I'm going to bend out my wires of my leaves. And these leaves are very, very wild and crazy. They go all different directions, and the poppies' heads will often be turned, again, different directions depending. You can kind of give some stretch if you want, arrange your petals if you want to. I don't really add a whole lot of stretching to these petals just because I like them to be very unusual. And there you go. You can see how that little tiny bit of dark pink crepe paper is just barely peeking through, not a lot of it. And then on the back side we have this cute little finish with our lighter pink. There you go. It's so happy. What do you guys think?
So pretty. We do have a question from Kathleen. So when you put the glue on the edge with the grain, not the edge against the grain. So I think it's when you were putting the petals on the back.
Oh, okay. So if you're talking about the petals, so when you're cutting your petals, be really careful to cut them with the grain. And when I added the glue to add the petals, I put the glue in about a triangle about this size. Can you see that? So my glue for each petal was about that much. And if that wasn't the right answer that you were looking for, go ahead and ask again.
Yeah, she's asking on the honeysuckle square piece.
Oh, on the honeysuckle. Yes. Okay, the honeysuckle square piece. Yes, this one. So again, the grain. So if you try to fold it against the grain, that would be really hard, or try to loop it. So I'll just do it one more time. Here we go. So I put the glue right on the edge with the grain. So I'm doing it the same direction as the grain. I'll hold it up tighter. See? Can you see that? Whoop. Then I'll go ahead and loop that over, because if you do it the other direction, you won't be able to do this little stretch. This is such a fine detail. That's why these tweezers really come in handy. So I'm going to just go ahead and pre-stretch that edge before I put it on, even though I don't have a flower to put it on. So you can see how if you did it the other direction, you wouldn't get this really pretty little stretch. There, There we go. Can you see that?
So pretty.
Yeah, so looking right now, I would probably do that first before you slide it onto the stem. And then once you get it on the stem, you can take your tweezers and then just kind of roll it. Give it a nice little roll like that, so that it's not, it's rolling away from the petals.
Michelle says that little bit of honeysuckle is the sweetest detail.
It is. And just having the dimension of the color, I think, adds so much. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I would love to see some of you make some flowers in different colors and share them on our community. You can really see that pink come through on the lighter colors as well. So you can just play with it and have some fun. So there we go. I also noticed one other thing. Again, I hope you guys forgive me because I made these flowers quite a while ago. So sometimes I have to remember and I'll forget something. So I want to show you this. If I can get the flower out, I can't. Okay, never mind. Let me see if I can show you on camera. Something that I just noticed that I forgot to show you is I actually wrapped the base of my flower with green before I added this pink bit so that there's a little bit of gap. So that's an option. Here's where I didn't do that, and here's where I did. I actually like it better with the green break. So what you would do is just add your green crepe paper first, just around the base, then slide up the hot pink, and then finish the stem. Sometimes I goof, but it's okay. It still looks great. All right, any other questions we have there?
We have a question about the art glitter glue. Nancy is wondering where she can find the rust-proof pins for the glue.
Yeah, we're still looking too, man.
Well, we do actually sell the metal tip attachment, and that little pack comes with an extra pin.
Yeah, it does come.
Because normal pins do rust.
They do, and I've had that problem a lot. I haven't gone out to research rust-proof pens. We thought the ones that we were selling were rust-proof because they said they were, but we're finding out that they weren't, so we changed the description. The pens that we use for felt.
Yes, but these ones that comes with a replacement cap comes straight from art glitter glue, and it's the same one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it's always really good to have extra tips on hand as well. And I don't know, it's hard for me to keep track of all my pens, but I do my best. So, yeah.
Erica is wondering what other colors do these wild poppies come in?
So they come in, I'll show you guys one more time here. I showed this at the beginning, but maybe not everybody caught that. So I would definitely do anything from, I would even go vanilla, chiffon, and then any coral absolutely would be gorgeous with the wild poppy. Nectarine, mango, tangerine, and poppy. You could also, I probably wouldn't do red, but I know there are some red poppies out there. They just look different. They're usually larger. So I kind of stick with the oranges and then the nectarine and yellows. So definitely use any of those colors. They will be gorgeous.
So the English garden is probably a really good sampler if you...
Well, so I would say the English garden does have the nectarine, so you could use these pinks and then these two. Where if you want your bright orange ones, then use the tropical garden has the brighter oranges. So yeah, if you're just getting one pack, I would definitely suggest this one. So yay! All right, anything else? I want to just, again, do one more shout out. If you haven't signed up for our masterclass yet, be sure and do that. Come back next week where we're going to be making these eucalyptus gum tree branches. So here's the branch itself, and then it has these little flowers here. There, I'll turn it for you. And we're making these flowers that go onto the branches. And then in August, we have our masterclass. And of course, next month, we're going to be doing another crepe paper flower right here. So make sure and come back then as well. All right. We will see you guys next time.